I was just recapping everything that's in the aid bill. This could be a good
Okay.
segue to talk about how they dropped the ball on the minimum wage. I know that's something you might want to chime in on.
Yeah, yeah. That is something I wanted to talk about. Like, first of all, okay, to speak on that, like, yes, there are things that are good in this minimum wage bill. Okay, we could do two things at the same time. We could talk about how some things are bad, while also talk about how there are things that are good. You know, they didn't give out $2,000 recurring checks, but there will be checks given out in this aid bill. There will be money that there's still money that's for unemployment, um, child tax credit, and other things of that nature. I think is in there as well. Um, there are a few good provisions. Now, does that make up for them not passing? Does that make up for what's not in the bill? No.
Mm.
Or the hateful eight and their behavior? Nah, it doesn't.
I think
It does
just
not.
to underscore this too, I know we're all upset about it, but I want to put this into an international context. Um, $15 is still not enough. If productivity and inflation had tracked with wages, it would be around $22, $25 an hour. That's one. And two,
Mm-hmm.
it's really embarrassing how like this is seen as like a bridge too far in the United States. When again, the minimum wage in other countries is already way higher. This is $15 an hour is the compromise, and especially I think AOC pointed this out. The way it was introduced in the reconciliation bit is even further compromised because it wasn't immediate. It was like $15 phased in over like 5 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really ridiculous that we've got people like the Joe Manchins and the Kristen Cinemas who are like, even though wages, we like there is no living wage now, why don't we cap it off at 11 or 12 or some other amount that is just about as laughable as 725? Oh, uh,
I think the, and not to cut you off, but the other thing about that makes it so egregious is that when you look at the medium wage index in West Virginia and in Arizona, most people in those states cannot survive off of $11 an hour. They can't buy a one bedroom apartment. They like a they will still be living they will still be at starvation wages even at $11 an hour. Like it's regressive, it's unproductive. It shows that they don't care. They just don't care. And the thing about the hateful eight, as we call them now, yeah, Kristen Cinema can do her best John McCain impression by putting her thumb down towards the minimum wage, uh forgetting the fact that yes, she's a bisexual woman, and she will remind you of that, forgetting the fact that 60% of women that works in this country make less than $15 an hour. One in one one fourth of those women in particular are Latino and Black. So Kristen Cinema didn't just give the middle finger to Americans; she gave the middle finger to a majority of women.
yeah, and she had the audacity to then like put some tweet out about how like, oh, essential workers are wonderful. It's like, yeah, well, how about giving them a pay raise? There was something else about the whole like, I mean, Kristen Cinema in
You know what those
particular
essential
has
workers
been
could have
getting
got.
so we get a lot of focus for like that thumbs down, that little like curtsy or whatever. And I think it's critical to point out like there's something a little deeper with Kristen Cinema that you don't even have with like the Joe Manchin types, which um Kristen Cinema is almost like a tragic story. There's this great article I'm going to recommend y'all. It's from Jacobin, written by David Sirota and Andrew Perez. Kristen Cinema went to Washington and became a monster, and it's important to understand like this wasn't some centrist beltway person who wanted to like climb up and get attain power. Just quick excerpts. I don't want to derail this, but like Unlike many corporatists in Washington, Sinema did not get her start as a standard issue business-friendly cyborg created in the West World-style factory at the local Chamber of Commerce. She was a Green Party icon and social worker who had been elected to Arizona's legislature as a proud, unabashed progressive. She even became a board member of a progressive organization which centered around countering groups like ALEC. The article links to an interview where she sounds like one of ours. She sounds like one of those like progressive Bernie Krat type people. She goes on to talk about how she got into politics because she saw underprivileged people in her community, became enraged that they weren't able to get past that place of poverty. You look back at her platform 10 years ago, and it was extremely progressive. Here's a tweet from March 11th, 2014, where she says a full-time minimum wage earner makes less than $16K a year. That's a no-brainer. Tell Congress to hashtag raise the wage. But she started changing her tune when she got to Washington. She voted to help corporate lobbyists harm lots of marginalized people. She claimed she got into politics for tech. She broke with her party to help the financial industry, became one of the top recipients of campaign cash from predatory lenders, and helped Republicans advance legislation to protect those lenders. So Kristen Sinema, I think is kind of a sad bit of like kind of Shakespearean poetry to it. It's like one of those people who started out as the type of activist you or I were, and then like, I don't know, if she listened to like Sheep Palpatine or something, and like
she's the result of remember when Nancy Pelosi was like, I've been fighting for Medicare for all. I have a sign for Medicare for all in my basement when back in the 80s. That's Kristen Sinema now.
Mm-hmm.
That is Kristen Sinema. She is everything that we hate about politicians that hide behind their identity to pave the way for to blanket themselves from when they do horrible policy. And let's be clear, millions of Americans would have gotten a pay raise. Millions of women would have gotten a pay raise. These are the disenfranchised. Many of people of color would have gotten a pay raise. The same type of people that Kristen Sinema says that she went to Washington to fight for, and she said, "Hey, all of y'all, I'm gonna let y'all eat cake, as as I do everything in my power to make sure you don't have a living wage."
Yeah.
That's Kristen Sinema.
Sometimes you stare into the abyss, and sometimes the abyss stares back at you and hands you a corporate donation. Something like that.
Man. Well, it's not, and it's not. Let's not be fair. I mean, let's be fair. It's not just her. There was other eight autocrats that all make millions of dollars, because the hateful eight, all of them makes millions of dollars. There was other eight, two of them from the state of Delaware, Biden's home state, which should tell you everything that you need to know about the Biden administration if they wanted to pass it. You're telling me that the former senator from Delaware could not get his two representatives to vote for the minimum wage bill? You're telling me that Kamala Harris can go down to West Virginia and do town halls and stuff. I mean, and go down and get good media coverage for saying that, yeah, we need to pass the COVID relief bill and we need to pass Medicare for all. You're telling me they couldn't pressure Joe Manchin to support the bill?
You bring up an excellent point, and I just wanted to leapfrog off it and just say, the buck does stop at president owes me $2,000 and vice president owes me a raise, and for a very important, that's what I'm just gonna call him on the show from now on. Anyway,
I funks with it.
All right. So something important I wanted to bring up was just you look at like the way this kind of mealy-mouthed, like, oh, we couldn't do it, like the parliamentarians said no, that kind of crap. And it's important to bring up that, like, one, we have historical examples of presidents who wait were way more aggressive about getting their agendas put through. So like I'm seeing this from a lot of liberals too. It's like, well, they can't do it because the moderate Democrats said no. Let's rewind to like 2 weeks ago. We were this close to having it pass with the $15 minimum wage with 50 votes plus Kamala Harris. Parliamentarians said no. With two things you need to remember. Look at like presidents like FDR, LBJ. Again, very flawed president.
George W. Bush.
Yeah, but they went out of their way to cajole and sometimes downright bully. Like LBJ was aggressive about getting his Great Society reforms through. So he was known to like bark at people who were like the moderate centrist Democrats who didn't want to do it, and he was like, no, we're doing this. And let us not forget, let us never forget that we would be passing 15 minimum wage right now, the phased in version, but still, if Kamala Harris had been like, I'm going to ignore the parliamentarian and we're going to do it anyway. That's all it would have took. So the buck stops with them. So, you know, again, we're talking about all these centrist Democrats who really, you know, prevented this from happening. But don't forget, you know, they, the president, vice president are also kind of using them as a scapegoat to say, well, we wanted to, but we can't. That is a lie. They absolutely could have. Want to.
Just to springboard off of that point, you want to talk about recent things about the parliamentarian? Are we forgetting the fact that that when it came to the Bush's tax cuts, the parliamentarian told Cheney administration, hey, y'all can't do this through reconciliation. What did they do? They fired the parliamentarian. The Trump tax cuts, same thing happened. Hey, you cannot pass these tax cuts through reconciliation. What happened? They fired the parliamentarian. Mm-hmm. They said thank you. They said thank you for your input. The door will see you on the way out. Yeah. Like it's not they've in the past they've taken the parliamentarian advice and said I will take it under consideration. And also, this is also, so we've gotten on corporate Democrats, we've gotten on Republicans, because not one of the corporate Republicans or even what was it, Josh Hawley and the others who try to pretend to be populist, they all also voted against it as well. So all of them are liars. But this also goes to the point that I have to make about the progressives. The progressives in the Congress chose not to pass it. They chose to have this bill go through without a $15 minimum wage. I love AOC. I really do. I love the squad. They are the best chance that we have to fight against neoliberalism and neo-fascism. But you have to wield power when you have it.
So just to back up a little, Lawrence, just for the viewers at home, listeners at home, I think what you're referring to is the squad and the Progressive Caucus more broadly. They would have enough of a voting block to basically say $15 minimum wage, or we're withholding the votes. That's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, and here's the thing. One other corporate Democrat voted against the relief package. They broke with the Republicans. So, and they only needed 6. And with one of the corporate Democrats, I forgot the guy's name, they would have only needed 5. Mm-hmm. 5 of them to say, hey, we're calling this the Hateful Eight rule. If the $15 minimum wage is not in this must-pass bill, and it's not like they weren't going to get this, this bill was not going to pass. This bill would have passed. It just would have passed later. If they would have been like, you know what, we're not going to vote. We're not voting for it until we're not going to have it passed until this provision is in there. They would have went back to the negotiating table with them having that demand, and they could have made their case publicly. Said, no, we're calling this the Joe Manchin rule. We're calling this the Kristen Sinema rule. If they don't pass this relief bill without $15 minimum wage, then we're not going to pass the bill either. Yeah. We're calling it the Hateful Eight rule. Don't
you
blame
know,
us.
I will say, like, charitably, I think, like, you could maybe make an argument like, well, maybe strategically, they're like, we want to get this bill through as quick as possible. People are waiting on these checks, etc.
Because people
However,
are
I think
hurting. Yeah.
you're absolutely right though. This is some, like, they need, like, the people in Congress who are social democrats, who are progressive, they need to start flexing their muscle. Especially, we've got like this 2 year window where any part of their agenda is actually going to be able to pass. And I think they're only going to get like maybe one or two more shots at doing these big reconciliation packages. So I think now that you've got this first one out there, when they're wrapping up the second one, they really need to be flex their muscle to make sure we get something a lot more progressive. Because again, I think, Joe Biden, to his credit, has been making this point on the media rounds about how, these tangible benefits to people, we need to actually sell that a lot more and be more vocal about it, because that might be the only thing that keeps them getting wiped out in 2 years in midterms.
Oh, they have screwed the pooch. They're going to get. I'm calling it now.
Yeah.
2024 and the next election cycle. Yeah, the Democrats have, in a couple other segments, the reason why I want to talk about it. Yeah, they screwed the pooch. They're gonna end up getting wiped out, and it's not because of a lack of trying. They tried hard to get wiped out. they have worked overtime to hurt themselves, and one of the ways that they hurt themselves is through this bill. You're gonna tell the same workers that you're gonna tell the workers of America, of your own party, when you campaign, say that if we get the Senate, if we organize, get John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock into the Senate, that we're gonna raise your wages. We're gonna give you $2,000 checks.
2,000.
We're gonna raise your wages.
Not 1,400.
You campaigned on this, and you're telling those same people now, we were just, we wasn't telling the truth, baby. We was wrong, right? Like, you turned us to juvenile on us, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Also, for like an administration that's so about like, let's dial down the temperature and like try to get Unite America, like that whole move to like restrict payments. So like less people are going to get them than under Trump was just
wait. Before you,
it's going to create
so
much cultural resentment among these people who are already going insane about Dr. Seuss and potatoes and crap. But
okay. One, I'm so glad you said that. When this goes back to the thing that we talk about all the time when it comes to the media. When the media says, when the politicians say we want things to be more targeted, what they mean is they want less people to get it. The media doesn't explain it that way. And we, as independent journalists, and shout out to Democracy Now!, shout out to Real News Network, Young Turks, and others. That's how they break down the code and what they're really saying. What they're really saying when they say more targeted is less people getting it. And we have to remember, when you hear these phrases, these code words, that's what they mean.
Yeah,
and
I think,
have to
maybe next week or the week after, we should do like a little just maybe like a deeper dive into like Biden's first 50 days or 69 days in office.
Yeah,
nice. But
we have to do a segment. Because I think media literacy is one of the biggest things that is not spoken about or talked about. I mean, not everybody's going to read Manufacturing Consent or Confessions of an Economic Hitman or some of the other stuff that we read when it comes to media and media language and how it breaks down. But we need to do a segment. Maybe we're going to have to start doing a segment called Code Switching or something, where we break down what is it that these politicians and what is the media actually saying. That actually might need to be a segment.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch how, I think that's a broader discussion about how the various media outlets are treating this. So like outlets like MSNBC, CNN are really overinflating, and like somebody pointed out, like there's this headline, it's like, Joe Biden is going to completely eliminate poverty and bring us balloons and puppies and stuff. It's like, this looks like the kind of headline that people think like North Korean press has about Kim Jong Un, you know, it's just basically journalistically filleting the Biden administration,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, just leaving out any kind of critique or nuance. Whereas, like as I was talking about in an earlier segment, the conservative media is kind of ignoring the relief package altogether to just talk about like culture war issues. So
oh
it's
yeah, there's a couple things that I do actually want to speak on. I want to speak about the most obvious thing in the world. The royal family is racist.
really. No
Really?
way.
Like that's a story that I do that's a story that I do that's a joke story, but the main reason why I wanted to talk about it was because of Pierce Morgan, but that's later in today's coverage.
Yeah.
but also, um did you hear, and goes back to another thing about Democrats and how establishment Democrats do not like us, and there is a backlash, and not to go back to what we're talking about.
Oh, is this
There's
the
a
Nevada thing?
backlash.
Is that
Well, no, there's a backlash for voting against the bill. We're saying that they should have voted against the bill. There's a backlash to voting against the bill. The backlash is that the media is going to say that their media is going to attack them, attack the squad. Um, they're going to be it's going to be vicious, heinous attacks on the squad. They're going to get hate from not just Democrats, but the mainstream media, the moderates, the Republicans, and mainstream media, and they don't want to. And the squad, for all intents and purposes of how they've been acting, they don't want to be seen as the bad guys.
so? If we're
And
talking about again that
strategy, we're talking about
where they
strategy.
flex their muscle and use their votes to try to push for progressive stuff. But yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
they would have been seen as the most heinous people in America. They're the ones that's holding up Americans from relief. Instead, and that's how the media would have framed it. Instead of the media framing it as, we're trying to give Americans a raise. we're going to give Americans a raise because these other Democrats and Republicans are not going to do that outside of the other conflicts of interest, like Joe Manchin owning 50% of a hotel chain in West Virginia, and his workers would have been affected by raising the minimum wage.
It's pretty transparent to see why he's against that. You know?
Yeah, or how Christian Cinema, like we were just talking about Christian Cinema, a majority of her donors, an overwhelming majority of her donors, would have to raise the salaries of their employees, and overwhelming majority of her donors are also part of the Chamber of Commerce, who did not want the raise the minimum wage. This is just what it is. It is what it is. The other problem with this main issue is that the squad, and I love the squad, they need to be comfortable being the bad guys, and they're not.
Yeah,
they're just not.
You know, it is a lot of like, there's this fine line you got to walk, and we've seen like Bernard has to walk it too, where he gives praise but criticism and all that stuff. But it's the liberals are in power. I think you don't have the specter of Trump, where it's like, oh, we all have to be completely unified. It's like, no, I think this is a time to get a little bit more, critical of their own party or whatnot. Particularly in this very brief window we have to actually get any kind of.
Speaking of